Ari Monroe never thought heartbreak could feel like suffocating underwater. Until today, it started like any other Saturday. Sunlight streaming through her blinds, the smell of fresh coffee filling her apartment, and a phone call from her favorite boutique owner, Nona. Ari had gone shopping that morning, hoping new clothes would distract her from the breakup she'd been pretending didn't bother her. When Nona asked how she was doing, Ari smiled, lied, and said she was fine. But that lie shattered the moment Nona said the words that froze her heart. "Girl, Devin's getting married." Ari blinked. "What?" "Today." Nona's voice trembled, her eyes darting to the floor, as if saying it made it real. The world around Ari blurred. Her chest tightened, her breath came out in short gasps. She'd just talked to Devin 3 months ago. They were supposed to get back together. They were supposed to be fine. Instead, he was walking down an aisle. The same aisle they'd once planned together, holding someone else's hand. Ari grabbed her purse, muttered something that wasn't even a goodbye, and bolted out of the store. She didn't know what she was doing, only that she had to see it with her own eyes. St. James Church towered above her like judgment itself. White stone walls, silver windows, and an endless line of cars filled the parking lot. Her hands shook as she pushed the heavy doors open. Inside, the scent of lilies and perfume mixed with the faint sound of vows. And there he was. Devin, the man she'd loved for years, standing in a red suit, smiling at another woman in a white gown. The wedding decor was exactly what Ari had planned. The red and white flowers, the crystal centerpiece, even the same song playing softly through the church speakers. Everything she'd imagined for herself now belonged to someone else. Her knees felt weak, her eyes blurred with tears. Devin's mother turned away. His sister whispered something to a friend. Everyone knew, everyone but her. Ari didn't make a scene. She didn't scream or run to stop the wedding like in those old romantic movies. She just stood there, silent, broken, watching her heart walk out of the church in another woman's arms. When the limousine pulled away, she was still standing on the steps, clutching her purse like it could hold her together. That was the day she swore off love. Weeks passed. The pain dulled, but it never disappeared. Her friends, Yaya, Nina, and Kam, tried to pull her out of it with laughter, drinks, and advice that sounded like therapy mixed with chaos. Yaya slammed her drink down. "Girl, I would have walked down that aisle and snatched the mic right out his hand." Nina laughed. "Nah, you'd still be locked up. Bail money ain't cheap." Cam shrugged. "Still worth it." Ari managed to smile. These women were her peace, her home. But even laughter felt temporary when the silence afterward echoed with memories. And just when she thought life couldn't throw her another curveball, it did. A moving truck pulled up next door. Boxes, laughter, the sound of bass-heavy music rumbling through her wall. And out stepped a man she'd never seen before. Tall, brown-skinned, with tattoos running down his forearms and eyes that carried the kind of calm that only came after chaos. Jace Maxwell. Her new neighbor? He smiled as he carried a box inside, the sound of old-school music following him like a personal soundtrack. Ari groaned, pressing a pillow over her head. "Perfect, a DJ, just what I need." She didn't know it yet, but that man next door, the one she already couldn't stand, was about to change everything. Ari Monroe had finally learned to live with quiet mornings with tea, quiet evenings with books, quiet thoughts that didn't wander toward men who lied. So when her new neighbor's music shook her picture frames and made her ceiling lights vibrate, she didn't just hear the bass, she heard disrespect. She slammed her laptop shut, tossed her pen on the couch, and muttered, "I swear, if he plays one more love song." Then came the next track, a love song. She stormed out of her apartment before she could talk herself down. Across the hall, Jace Maxwell was unpacking vinyl records, half humming along, half singing badly. Music was his peace, a replacement for the noise in his head. The breakup, the betrayal, the lies, they had all left him numb, so he drowned it all in rhythm and bass. It was either that or anger, and tonight the music was winning. He didn't notice the furious woman knocking until the third pound shook the door. When he opened it, Ari stood there, arms crossed, curls wild, wearing a look that could stop time. "Hi," Jace said with an easy grin. "You must be the welcome committee." She blinked. "Welcome? No, I'm the complaint department." "Oh, already? I just moved in." "Yeah, and you brought a club with you." He leaned against the doorframe, grin widening. "You don't like music?" "I like music that doesn't sound like an earthquake." "I could play something softer." "Try silence." Her words came out sharp enough to cut. Jace lifted both hands in surrender. "All right, Miss Quiet. Didn't mean to mess up your evening." Ari nodded, proud of herself. "Thank you." She turned and started walking away, but Jace couldn't help himself. "For what it's worth," he called after her, "you got the meanest glare I've ever seen. Kinda sexy, though." Ari froze mid-step, then looked over her shoulder. "You ever call my glare sexy again, I'll report you to management." He chuckled, unfazed. "Worth it." The door closed, but she could still hear his laugh echoing through the hall. And she hated that part of her, almost smiled. Later that night, Ari lay in bed, scrolling on her phone. Her thumb stopped when she landed on Jace's social media page. DJ, music producer, promoter, 600,000 followers, and a bio that read, "Turning heartbreak into playlists." Her lips twitched. Of course, a broken heart and an ego. What a combo! Still, she scrolled a little further. There were pictures of him on stage, surrounded by lights and cheering crowds. One post caught her eye, a caption that read, "Some people cheat because they're bored, others because they're broken. I learned the difference the hard way." Ari sighed and turned off her phone. She didn't know his story, and she didn't want to. She just wanted quiet. Meanwhile, in the apartment next door, Jace stood on his balcony with a drink in hand, looking out over the city lights. He replayed their brief conversation in his head, a smirk tugging at his lips. She was stubborn, sharp-tongued, unbothered. Or at least trying to be. And for some reason, that made her the most interesting woman he'd met in years. Jace took another sip, whispering to himself, "Yeah, I'll get her to smile eventually." He didn't realize she was standing on her own balcony, just feet away, watching the same skyline. Ari exhaled softly, whispering her own warning. "Not a chance, neighbor! Not a chance!" By the third night, Ari Monroe was convinced her new neighbor was testing her patience. Or maybe her sanity. Every evening at 9:30 on the dot, the bass would start. Not just any music. Love songs. Old school, slow, unapologetically loud love songs. Almost as if he knew she was trying to move on from the very thing those lyrics kept reminding her of. She'd tried everything: earplugs, noise-canceling headphones, even meditation. Nothing worked. So tonight, she decided to fight noise with noise. Ari grabbed her speaker, set it on the balcony, and hit play. The sound of angry rock music filled the night air, clashing horribly with the smooth R&B coming from Jace's side. It was chaos, loud, petty, and completely satisfying. Inside his apartment, Jace froze mid-song. He turned down his mixer and listened, realizing the war had begun. He smirked. "Oh, that's how we playing it?" He cranked his volume higher, matching her song beat for beat. For the next 10 minutes, the hallway sounded like two radio stations fighting for dominance. Ari wasn't backing down. She strutted to her balcony door, lifted her cup of tea, and toasted toward his direction. Through the soft glow of his living room light, she could just make out his silhouette doing the same, lifting his glass in mock salute. It was petty. It was ridiculous. And somehow, it was fun. The next morning, the apartment manager slid a bright yellow notice under both of their doors. Noise complaint, building violation. Ari read it, jaw tightening. Oh, he's gonna pay for this. Meanwhile, Jace stood in his own kitchen, reading the same notice, grinning. Worth it. He grabbed his phone and texted the number that had been accidentally shared during the building's welcome mixer. Jace. Good morning, Miss Complaint Department. Guess we're both officially on management's naughty list. Ari stared at the text, then typed back. Ari, I don't text strangers. Seconds later, another message appeared. Jace, then it's a good thing I'm not a stranger. I'm your next-door headache. Ari rolled her eyes, but couldn't stop the small grin tugging at her lips. She typed one last message. Ari, headache? Try migraine. Jace chuckled, sliding his phone into his pocket. She's got jokes. That evening, Ari returned home from work, exhausted. She was halfway through microwaving leftovers when the doorbell rang. She opened it to find Jace standing there with a box of pastries and a grin that belonged in a commercial. Peace offering, he said. Ari crossed her arms. What's this supposed to be? An apology or a bribe? Little bit of both. I figured if I fed you, you'd stop plotting my death. She hesitated, eyeing the box. They smelled good. Too good. He tilted his head. What's the worst that could happen? You accept? I stop blasting music, and we both avoid eviction? Ari sighed, took the box, and muttered, Fine, but if you start another midnight concert, I'll throw these at your door. Fair. As she closed the door, Jace grinned to himself. She'd accepted. That was progress. Later that night, Ari sat at her kitchen table, eating one of the pastries, shaking her head. He was charming, too charming. And she'd been down that road before, the one that started with smiles and ended with tears. Still, she couldn't ignore the fact that for the first time in months, she'd laughed. Just a little, just enough to scare her. Across the hall, Jace sat at his desk, mixing a new track. The music was softer now, slow, soulful, intimate. And for the first time since moving in, he turned the volume way down. He didn't want to annoy her anymore. He just wanted her to listen. By Saturday morning, Ari Monroe had convinced herself she was over it. The neighbor, the noise, the flirtatious grin that wouldn't leave her mind. Totally over it. So, naturally, the first thing she did was invite her 3 closest partners in crime over for brunch and gossip. Yaya arrived first, wearing her trouble t-shirt, which was both a warning and a prophecy. Then came Calm, carrying mimosas like she was delivering salvation, followed by Nina, who always brought logic nobody asked for. The moment Ari mentioned the word neighbor, Yaya leaned forward like a detective who just found her next case. "Fine or fine?" she asked. Ari rolled her eyes. "He's average." Nina snorted. "Girl, please. You said his arms look like he lifts regrets for a living." "Did I say that?" Cam raised a brow. "You did, verbally, and with thirst." Ari sighed. "He's arrogant, loud, thinks his music's therapy for the world." Yaya grinned. "So basically, you like him." "I do not!" But the way she said it, too quick, too defensive, made everyone laugh. That's when Yaya slapped her hands together. "All right, ladies, Operation Payback." Ari frowned. "What are you plotting?" "Justice," Yaya said dramatically. "For every bass drop, every vibrating wall, and every night your poor, innocent ears suffered." Cam pulled out her phone. "What's the plan?" "Simple," Yaya said. "He woke you up at night. We wake him up in the morning." Ari shook her head. "No, absolutely not." 10 minutes later, she was standing on her balcony holding 2 metal pots and a wooden spoon. At exactly 7 a.m., Yaya counted them down. 3, 2, 1, bang it! The sound of chaos exploded across the complex. Nina and Cam were cackling, Yaya was chanting like a hype woman, and Ari couldn't stop laughing. It felt good. It felt free. Until the black curtains on Jace's balcony parted. There he was, messy hair, sleepy eyes, and nothing but a towel around his waist. The laughter died instantly. Yaya whispered, "Sweet Lord." Cam added softly, "His mama named him Jace, 'cause Jesus would have been too on the nose." Ari's face turned red. She was staring, couldn't help it. He lifted his cup of coffee in mock salute, smirked, and mouthed, "Good morning, neighbor." Ari dropped the pot. "Oh my God!" Yaya was doubled over. "You just saw the Holy Spirit of abs!" Ari grabbed her friends and dragged them inside, slamming the sliding door shut. Her heart was racing, her face was burning, and she hated, absolutely hated, that she couldn't stop smiling. Meanwhile, Jace stood there laughing quietly to himself. No anger, no irritation, just amusement. He set his coffee down, shook his head, and muttered, "Feisty little thing." Then, still smiling, he went back inside, humming to himself as if the morning chaos was the best start he'd had in years. That night, Ari sat in bed replaying the moment in her head. The smirk, the towel, the curve of that grin when he realized she'd been caught looking. She buried her face in her pillow. Nope, not thinking about it, not doing this. But every time she closed her eyes, she saw him standing there again, that mix of confidence and charm she swore she didn't like. Maybe it was the wine, maybe it was loneliness, but a tiny part of her wondered what he was doing right now. Across the hall, Jace sat at his keyboard, creating a new beat. Soft, smooth, slow. He titled the file, "Morning Trouble," Ari Monroe did not believe in fate. She believed in calendars, meal plans, and staying far away from men whose smiles looked expensive. But that belief took a hit the moment her friend Nina texted her a flyer. Speed dating night, sight unseen event at the community room. Ari typed back immediately, "Absolutely not." 10 minutes later, she was standing in front of her mirror, fixing her hair. The community room glowed with string lights and nervous energy. Everyone wore blindfolds, laughter echoing off the walls as strangers tried to find their seats. Ari tugged at hers, feeling ridiculous. Her attendant whispered, "Don't peek. That's cheating." She sighed. "I'm not cheating. I'm reconsidering my life choices." "Too late, darling. You're number 516. Good luck." The whistle blew, and voices filled the room. The first man talked too much, the second one not enough. The third called himself a manifestation coach, which was code for unemployed. By the fourth seat, she was over it. Then came him. His voice was deep, smooth, and warm. "Hey, I'm number 615. Something about it made her chest tighten. It was confident, but not cocky. Playful, but calm. "Hi, 615. I'm 516. What brings you here?" he asked. "Peer pressure and bad wine," she answered. He laughed, low and genuine. "Good combination." They talked like they'd known each other for years. Favorite foods, worst dates, childhood dreams. Every answer clicked into place like a melody. When the final buzzer sounded, Ari didn't want to leave. "Guess that's our 3 minutes." He hesitated. "Maybe we'll get matched." Her lips curved. "If we don't, it was still nice talking to you, 615. An hour later, the host announced the matches. Ari waited, palms sweaty beneath the blindfold. "Number 516 and number 615, you are a match." Her stomach fluttered. Her attendant guided her to a seat and whispered, "You can take it off now." She lifted the blindfold slowly, blinking into the soft light, and froze. There he was, leaning against the table, half smile in place, diamond studs catching the light. Jace Maxwell, her neighbor, her enemy, her match. For a moment, neither spoke. Then he grinned. "Should have known that voice belonged to you," Miss Noy's complaint. Ari exhaled a laugh she didn't mean to let out. "You've got to be kidding me." "Fate's got a sense of humor," he said. "Fate needs a hobby," she shot back. He extended a hand. "Truce?" She eyed it for a long second before sighing and shaking it. Electric. That was the only word for it. Later that night, back in her apartment, Ari stood by her door listening. No music, no bass, just quiet. But she could still hear his voice in her head, that easy laughter, those teasing words. Across the hall, Jace sat at his desk, grinning at nothing. He typed a note into his phone. Playlist idea. Blind date with a firecracker. Jace Maxwell wasn't a man who liked waiting, but for Ari Monroe, he made an exception. It had been 2 weeks since the blind date that changed everything. The night they both learned fate had a wicked sense of humor. Since then, she'd kept her distance, always polite, but always busy. He'd wave in the hall. She'd smile, then vanish. He'd text, "Good morning, sunshine," and she'd reply 12 hours later with, "Evening." But tonight, that was about to change. Ari stood in front of her mirror, tugging at the hem of her denim shorts and muttering under her breath. This is not a date. It's a peace outing. A public truce with roller skates. Yaya's voice echoed in her head. Girl, it's only a truce if you ain't wearing lip gloss. Ari sighed. Too late. She was already applying the second coat. Down the hall, Jace was pacing his living room, spraying cologne like it was a battle strategy. When he finally heard her door open, he stepped out, leaning against his frame with that signature grin. Look who showed up, he teased. Ari smiled, locking her door. Don't push it. I almost canceled twice. Glad you didn't, you look. He stopped, the word lingering. Like someone who's about to beat me in a skate race. Good save, she said, smirking. At the rink, the lights were low, and the music was nostalgic. Classic R&B humming through the speakers, couples gliding past like memories in motion. Ari laced up her new pink skates while Jace leaned against the wall, watching her struggle with the laces. You sure you don't need help? He asked. I'm fine. 2 seconds later, she nearly tipped over. He caught her by the arm, steady and easy. Told you. Yeah, don't gloat. Wouldn't dream of it. But he was already smiling. Once they hit the rink, Ari was surprised by how natural it felt. The music, the laughter, the way he skated backward in front of her, like he'd been doing this his whole life. He reached out his hand. Trust me? She hesitated, then placed her palm in his. His fingers were warm, confident. He pulled her close, skating in rhythm with her steps. The lights flickered across his face, and for a moment, she forgot why she'd been avoiding him. The song changed to something slow and soft, a love ballad from the 90s. Ari laughed nervously. Don't you dare turn this into a movie moment. Jace grinned. Too late. He spun her gently, catching her before she lost balance. Their faces were inches apart. She looked up, eyes catching his. You practice that? Every night since the noise complaint. Her laugh broke the tension, but the blush that followed said everything. After skating, they ended up at a rooftop restaurant. Groove Theory. Ari raised an eyebrow. You actually got reservations here? It's booked 6 months out. Jace shrugged. I've got connections. Or charm. Hard to tell which. Probably charm. And maybe a little luck. They ordered ribs, mac and cheese, and drinks that made the world feel easier. For the first time in a long time, Ari felt something she'd almost forgotten. Safe. Not because the man across from her was perfect, but because he wasn't trying to be. When dessert came, Jace leaned forward. You still thinking about him? Ari froze. Who? Whoever broke you. She looked down, tracing the rim of her glass. Sometimes. But mostly, I think about not wanting to feel like that again. He nodded. Then don't. Simple words, but the way he said them made her believe it might actually be possible. Later that night, when he walked her to her door, the hallway was quiet. Ari turned the key, pausing before she stepped inside. Tonight was nice. Jace smiled. Nice enough for a second date? She hesitated, pretending to think about it. Maybe. He took a slow step closer, his voice low. I'll take maybe. Their eyes met for a heartbeat too long before she slipped inside and closed the door, her back pressed against it as she whispered to herself. Maybe is a problem? Across the hall, Jace leaned against his door, smiling to himself. He knew what maybe really meant. He whispered, We're getting somewhere. And from that night on, They were. For the next few days, Jace Maxwell couldn't stop replaying that night in his head. The skating, the laughter. That look Ari Monroe gave him right before whispering, "Maybe." He'd been around plenty of women before, but something about Ari hit different. She wasn't just beautiful. She was guarded, careful, unpredictable. And now, she was avoiding him again. 3 days had gone by since their date. No calls, no texts, not even a sarcastic comment in the hallway. Jace had sent a simple message that morning. "Hope you're having a good day, sunshine." No reply. By afternoon, he was pacing his apartment, glancing at his phone like it owed him rent money. "She really ghosting me?" he muttered. His best friend Thad called right on cue. "Bro, why do you sound like you lost custody of your phone?" Jace sighed. "I took her skating. I cooked her dinner once. She laughed at my jokes. Now she's MIA. "Ah, so she realized you're dangerous." "Dangerous?" "Yeah. Women can sense when a man's about to make them fall for him. That's when they run." Jace smirked. "So she's scared of me?" "Nah. She's scared of what she feels when she's around you. Big difference." Meanwhile, Ari sat in her living room, staring at the phone she hadn't answered. Her chest tightened as she reread his text. It was harmless, kind even. But that's what scared her. Every time she started to trust someone, life had a way of pulling the rug out from under her. She remembered the vows Devin had whispered once, the same ones he later said to another woman. She wasn't doing that again. No, sir. She had rules now, boundaries, and Jace Maxwell, with his smooth words and magnetic smile, was crossing every single one of them. Yaya, of course, didn't see it that way. When Ari confessed she was avoiding him, her best friend nearly dropped her phone. "Girl, what are you doing?" "I'm protecting my peace." "You're protecting your fear. There's a difference." Ari frowned. "You think he's different?" Yaya shrugged. "Different enough to make you stutter when you talk about him." Ari didn't argue, mostly because she didn't have a comeback. That night, Jace decided to test fate. He showed up at her door with 2 smoothies and that grin she hated herself for liking. When she opened the door, her face said, "I should have ignored that knock." "Hey, neighbor," he said. "I brought peace offerings." Ari sighed. "What are you doing here?" "Checking on you. Haven't seen you in a few days." "I've been busy." "Doing what?" "Being an adult." He chuckled. "Sounds exhausting." "It is." They stared at each other for a moment, the kind of silence where every unsaid word hung in the air like static. Finally, she stepped aside. "Fine, come in." He handed her the smoothie, looking around her apartment. It smelled like vanilla candles and discipline. "You really live like this?" he asked, scanning the spotless counter. "Like what?" "Like your furniture pays rent." Ari smirked. "Some of us like things in order, and some of us like a little chaos." She gave him a look. "Clearly." "Balance, baby," he said, grinning. She rolled her eyes but couldn't help smiling. "Don't call me baby." "Noted, baby." Ari laughed. Just a small one, and Jace felt that flicker of connection spark right back to life. When he left that night, Ari stood by the door longer than she meant to. The hallway was quiet again, but it didn't feel like silence anymore. It felt like tension holding its breath. She whispered to herself, You're playing with fire, girl. Across the hall, Jace leaned against his door with a half smile and whispered back to the universe, "Then I hope she burns for me too." Or Ari Monroe didn't believe in accidents, she believed in consequences. Which is why, as she stood outside her neighbor's door for the third time that week, she muttered to herself, "This is not stalking. This is accountability." Jace Maxwell had started playing music again. Not loud enough to cause a noise complaint, just loud enough to crawl under her skin. He wasn't testing the volume, he was testing her, and she knew it. The hallway was quiet, except for the slow, heavy rhythm coming from behind his door. A beat too smooth to be innocent. Ari knocked once. No answer. She knocked again. Still nothing. Her jaw tightened. "Oh, so now he's ignoring me?" She gave the door one last knock, harder this time, and the door slowly creaked open. Unlocked. That should have been her first sign to walk away, but curiosity had a voice louder than reason. "Jace," she called softly. No reply. She stepped inside, clutching her purse like a weapon. His living room was empty, neat but scattered with signs of life. A half-empty smoothie cup, a few open notebooks. The faint scent of cologne hung in the air, mixed with something warmer, familiar. The music was coming from down the hall. She followed the sound, her steps careful, her heart unsure if she was angry or something else. "Jace, if you're in here." Her words caught in her throat, because there he was. Jace Maxwell, sitting on the edge of his bed, shirtless, head tilted back, breath heavy, hand moving slow over his chest. The faint blue glow from the TV flickered across his skin. It took Ari a second to realize the sound wasn't just music. It was a movie, an adult movie. Her breath hitched. Before she could move, before her brain could catch up with her eyes, his gaze met hers. He didn't look shocked. He didn't look embarrassed. He looked right at her and smiled. For a moment, time froze. Ari stood in the doorway, frozen in horror and something she refused to name. Her mind screamed move, but her body stayed rooted. Jace's voice was low, dark, teasing. "You can come in, or you can close the door. Your call, sweetheart." Her pulse spiked. I was knocking." "You sure were." She took a shaky breath and turned on her heel, blurting out, "Lock your door next time!" before practically running out of the apartment. Back inside her own place, she slammed the door shut, leaned against it, and covered her face. Her heart was racing, her cheeks were burning, and her brain was spinning faster than she could think. "Oh my God!" she whispered. "He saw me. I saw him. This is bad." She tried to shake it off, tried to convince herself it was just a misunderstanding. But her body wasn't listening. Her hands trembled, her breath was uneven, and her skin tingled, like it remembered everything she wasn't supposed to notice. She marched to her room, muttering, "Nope, absolutely not. I'm not thinking about this." She lasted 4 minutes. Then she grabbed her blanket, buried her face in it, and groaned. "Oh my God, he's never gonna let me live this down." Meanwhile, across the hall, Jace sat on the edge of his bed, grinning like a man who'd just won a game he wasn't supposed to play. He could still see her expression, that mix of shock, curiosity, and something softer, she didn't want to admit. He whispered to himself, "Guess we're past the neighbor stage now." That night, neither of them slept, for different reasons, and maybe the same one. There are two types of silence, the kind that feels peaceful, and the kind that feels like the air is waiting for something to explode. That night, Ari Monroe sat in her living room wrapped in a blanket, staring at her ceiling fan, still thinking about that moment. The accidental walk-in, the look on his face, the way her body betrayed her with a reaction she still refused to acknowledge. She'd replayed it 100 times, each time cringing harder than the last. "God, I can never face him again," she whispered. And right on cue, as if the universe loved chaos, the lights flickered once, then went completely out. Ari sighed, rubbing her temples. Perfect, just perfect. The entire building was silent now. No hum of electricity, no AC, nothing. She grabbed her phone, using the flashlight to guide her to the kitchen. Then came the knock, 3 short taps. Her heart jumped. She walked to the door, hesitating before opening it. There stood Jace Maxwell, holding a flashlight and that infuriating grin that somehow still looked good in the dark. "Power's out," he said. "You okay?" Ari crossed her arms. "I'm fine." "Good. I brought candles." "Why do you have candles?" He smirked. "Romantic emergencies." Ari blinked. "You're kidding." "Mostly." She should have closed the door right there. Instead, she sighed and stepped aside. "Come in before I change my mind." They set the candles on her coffee table, the soft orange glow dancing against the walls. The silence between them stretched thin, not awkward, just charged. Jace sat on the couch, glancing around. "You really don't like clutter, huh?" "It keeps my mind calm." "Then I must drive you insane." "You have no idea." He chuckled, leaning back. "You've been avoiding me." Ari looked up sharply. "What makes you say that?" "The fact that you only text me back when Mercury's in retrograde." She rolled her eyes. "You're imagining things." He tilted his head, studying her face. "No, I think you're scared." That made her freeze. "I'm not scared of you." He leaned forward, his voice softer now. "Didn't say you were scared of me." The candlelight flickered between them, painting shadows across his jawline. For a long moment, Ari said nothing. Then she exhaled. "You really think I'm just gonna fall for some guy because he smiles and brings smoothies?" "I think," Jace said slowly, "that you already did. And that's why you're running." Her eyes narrowed. "You're too sure of yourself." "Only when I'm right." The air felt heavy now. Too heavy. Ari stood up, pacing. "You don't get it, Jace. I've done this before." Fell for the charm, the laughs, the good intentions. It always ends the same. He rose to his feet, too. "Maybe because you keep picking the wrong men." "And you think you're the right one?" "I don't know," he said honestly, "but I'm the one standing here trying." She stared at him, at the way his voice softened near the end, at the honesty in it. It wasn't a line, it wasn't ego. It was real. And that scared her more than anything. The thunder outside cracked loud enough to make her flinch. Jace instinctively reached out, his hand brushing her arm. That single touch felt like electricity in the dark. Her breath hitched. Neither of them moved. Seconds stretched into something deeper. A quiet understanding that words couldn't carry. Finally, Jace whispered, "Tell me you don't feel this, and I'll walk out that door." Ari looked up, eyes flickering with every emotion she'd tried to bury. "I don't," she whispered, but her voice shook, and he heard it. Jace smiled faintly. "Liar." The next flash of lightning filled the room, just as his lips brushed hers. Soft at first, hesitant, like a question waiting for permission. She didn't push him away. Didn't move at all. When the thunder rolled again, she kissed him back. Slow, careful. Like two people both trying not to fall, and failing anyway. When the lights finally flickered back on, they were still standing there, foreheads pressed together, breathing heavy, surrounded by melting candles. Ari whispered, "This was a bad idea." Jace smiled, "Probably." And then he kissed her again anyway. The morning after a confession always feels different. The world looks the same, but something in the air shifts. Heavier, sweeter, dangerous, in a way only desire can be. For Ari Monroe, it felt like walking a tightrope between everything she wanted and everything she swore she'd never do again. She woke to sunlight streaming through the blinds, half-dressed, tangled in a blanket that smelled faintly like him. Her mind replayed the night before, the storm, the candles, his hands, his words. Every memory came with a question she didn't want to answer. What happens now? Across the hall, Jace Maxwell was staring at his ceiling with the same thought. He wasn't the type to second-guess himself, but Ari wasn't just another girl. She was the one woman he couldn't read like a lyric. Last night had been real, raw, unplanned. And now, he didn't know if she'd open her door or pretend it never happened. By noon, the hallway between them felt like neutral ground in a silent war. Ari's heart was still beating faster than it should when she heard the knock. She opened the door halfway, still trying to sound calm. "Hey!" Jace smiled, tired but genuine. "Hey yourself, just wanted to make sure you're good." "I'm fine. Fine like I slept great? Or fine like please never mention last night again?" She hesitated. "The second one." He nodded slowly. "Right." But the disappointment in his eyes said he didn't believe her. He turned to leave, but her voice stopped him. "Jace!" He looked back. "Last night, it wasn't supposed to happen." He stepped closer, voice soft. "Maybe not, but it did. That's the problem." He shook his head. "No, the problem is you're still trying to control something that already chose you." Her breath caught. "Don't say things like that." "Why not? You think I didn't feel it too?" Ari looked away, whispering, "Feeling something doesn't make it right." "Then what does?" he asked. "Because if two broken people can find a little peace in each other, maybe that is right." She didn't answer. Couldn't. The silence said everything. For a long moment, they just stared at each other. The hallway lights flickering above them, like the world couldn't decide whether to interfere. Then, finally, she stepped forward. "Jace!" Her hand brushed his chest. "I don't know what this is." He caught her hand gently. "Then let's find out." The kiss that followed wasn't like the first. It wasn't hesitant or questioning. It was an answer, one that neither of them could take back. her fingers tangled in his hair, his hands pressed against her waist, and every unspoken word between them melted into that moment. The line they'd drawn weeks ago, the one between friendship and something far riskier, disappeared completely. When they finally broke apart, both of them were breathless. Ari whispered, "This changes everything." Jace smiled faintly. "Good. I was getting bored." She laughed, soft and nervous, resting her forehead against his chest. For now, that was enough. Later that night, as they sat on the couch sharing takeout and silence, Ari caught herself watching him, the way he chewed, the way he smiled when he caught her looking. Something inside her shifted again. This wasn't just a spark, it was a warning and a promise. Because falling for Jace Maxwell wasn't safe. It was inevitable,